Just before we get into the video for today, let me thank our sponsor Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for creators with thousands of classes in design, business, and more. We've talked about Skillshare a few times on this channel, and we've mentioned the various courses and things you can learn on that platform. But maybe you haven't got Skillshare yet, and therefore you're totally skill-less. That's a great shame though, because there are thousands of classes on Skillshare for you to level up your design, business, video, social media, whatever skills. Or just take them from nothing to something. You can do that too. At a time when so many important conversations are happening in our world, your voice is more essential than ever. Explore classes to unlock your creativity for social good. Here on VisualPolitik, we've taken video production courses, camera courses, YouTubey stuff. We also want to squeeze out as much as possible from our day, so we watched a course by this guy called Thomas Frank, who's also a YouTuber. Great stuff and worth checking out if you want to get more done in a day. So yeah, Skillshare, just go do it. You'll like it. It's less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. Support VisualPolitik by supporting Skillshare. The first 1,000 people to use the link in our description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership so you can explore your creativity. And I'm pretty sure you'll continue your membership because it is so great. And now, let's get cracking. Do you remember the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park? Well, it is likely that in the year 2025, you'll be able to visit them in person, in Saudi Arabia. And no, I haven't gone crazy. And what's more surprising, this is one of their brilliant strategies to save them from the brink of ruin. That's right. When we think of Saudi Arabia, we think of millionaire sheikhs, skyscrapers, and the most extravagant luxuries. Oil has turned this country into one of the world's greatest powers. However, Saudi Arabia is actually getting closer to economic collapse. And I say collapse with a capital C. Saudi Arabia could become the next Greece before this decade is out. Those of you who are veteran followers of VisualPolitik already know why. We have been covering the crisis in Saudi Arabia for years. Basically, almost the entire economy of this country depends on dinosaur juice. Crude oil represents almost 90% of this country's exports. And if there's one product that's been affected by the coronavirus, it's oil. Prices have collapsed. And as the price of a barrel of oil drops, all of their income drops. We're talking about a country that has been used to living in an economic utopia for decades. To give you an idea, almost all Saudi citizens work for the state in conditions unthinkable elsewhere on the planet. They barely pay any taxes and receive a lot of state-funded aid. But those days are over, and now they need to diversify their economy. And this is where all those great projects you have heard about come in. Megacities in the middle of the desert, a Jurassic Park, flying cabs, and even an artificial moon. So my friends of VisualPolitik, Saudi Arabia is rebuilding itself from top to bottom, and it's doing so in a desperate measure to avoid bankruptcy. In between, there are ridiculous investments and, to cap it all, a lot of killing. And that is what I said. So the question we are asking today is, will the megacities really save this country from economic ruin? Why does Saudi Arabia want to put dinosaurs in the middle of the desert? Will they really be able to carry out such mega projects? And did I really say an artificial moon? Today, we are going to answer all of these questions. But first, let's look at a little history.
The mirage of the petrodollar.
In 2017, Mohammed Bin Salman was appointed Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. One of the first things he did as soon as he came to power was to gather all the political and economic elites of the country and lock them up in a luxury suite at the Ritz Hotel in Riyadh. And they were all accused of corruption. Since then, Bin Salman has been, de facto, the absolute leader of Saudi Arabia. And he has a very clear mission to modernize and diversify his country's economy. Time is running out, and Saudi Arabia needs to produce something other than the sweet, sweet dinosaur juice. The big question is, what? Is it really possible to create competitive companies in this country? Well, the truth is that it's almost impossible. Yes, it is true the Saudi population is very young. 40% are under 25 years old. Many of these young people could be the next Elon Musk or the Mark Zuckerberg of the future. In fact, many of them have studied at university. So what's the problem? Well, only 20% of Saudi Arabian university students have studied technical careers. Most Saudi students choose degrees such as theology, Arabic studies, or Arabic literature. As you can imagine, with that kind of training, it is difficult to set up a rival to Facebook. In fact, most private companies in Saudi Arabia avoid hiring Saudi citizens. To give you an idea, of the Saudi workforce, 35% are immigrants working in the oil or construction sector, 38% are civil servants, and 15% are unemployed. Only 12% of Saudi citizens work outside the state. And yeah, you did hear that correctly. 38% of the workforce works for the state. As a comparison, France, which is also a country that supports a huge state, has only 24%. Mon Dieu. All this means two things. The first is that it's very difficult to get new companies started. The second is that, at the time when the Saudi state has stopped hiring more officials, unemployment levels have skyrocketed. This year, 2020, youth unemployment is at 65%. So, Vision 2030 is really Bin Salman's desperate plan to modernise the country. Part of this plan consists of a $445 billion sovereign wealth fund that invests in companies. For example, Saudi Arabia has invested in companies such as Boeing, Facebook, and Disney. But if you really want to modernize your country, you need much, much more than that. And since there are hardly any economic sectors beyond oil, Bin Salman has decided to create them from scratch. How? With mega projects. So far, Saudi Arabia has Mecca, which is the religious capital of Islam. Bin Salman's plan is to build new Meccas, but not religious ones, economic ones. The Mecca of tourism, the Mecca of biotechnology, the Mecca of green energies. We are talking about whole cities built from scratch. Cities that would make those new Chinese metropolises that we have told you about so many times on VisualPolitik look like backward villages. For example, on the Red Sea coast, they hope to finish 5 artificial islands by 2022 and 16 luxury hotels. On the outskirts of Riyadh, they are building Qiddiya, which aspires to be the capital of healthy leisure. In other words, a kind of Las Vegas, but without casinos, alcohol, and without Elvis impersonators. So, in my opinion, Las Vegas without any fun. With all this, Saudi Arabia wants to copy the example of Dubai, but to the extreme. However, the real jewel in the crown is the city of NEOM. We're going to talk about this later, and you're going to have to hold on to your chair because I guarantee you've never seen anything like it in your life. And I know what you're thinking now. Okay, so now he's going to say the coronavirus has ruined all these projects, right? Well, I'm sorry to tell you that you're wrong.
Between austerity and megalomania.
Like almost every country in the world, Saudi Arabia has had to pull out a corona rescue for all the small businesses that have had to close down during the lockdown. We're talking about more than $32 billion that have triggered debt levels. And this explains news headlines like this one.
Kingdom of Saudi Arabia VAT rate to increase to 15% from the 1st of July 2020. Deloitte.
I know what you might be thinking now. A goods and services tax of 15%? That's no big deal. But it is if we take into account that it used to be only 5%. And before 2018, Saudi Arabia didn't even charge it. In other words, the government has been forced to triple this tax overnight. And of course, they also have to cut all the aid they gave to civil servants. However, it is one thing to talk about current spending, where they have made cuts. It is quite a different story when it comes to investment. With or without the coronavirus, Saudi Arabia needs to start producing more than just oil. And one of the sectors it is betting on is real estate. And part of Bin Salman's Vision 2030 goal is that 70% of Saudis will own a home by 2030. All of this indicates that the government is building new residential areas everywhere. This is the case, for example, of Saudi Murkia, a macro-urbanization financed by the Saudi and Chinese governments. The first phase is almost 6,000 new homes, and 90% of them have already been sold. But believe me, beyond luxury housing, artificial rivers, and many, many mosques, these are just residential areas. Projects, to some extent, that are a bit average. at least if we compare them to the jewel in the crown, Bin Salman's personal pet project, what could easily be called the most ambitious project in the history of mankind. Check this out.
The city of the future.
Let me present to you the city of NEOM. It does not exist yet, but supposedly in the year 2030, the whole world will marvel at the biggest city in the world, built from scratch in the middle of the desert. We are talking about a city of 26,000 square kilometers that will make it 33 times bigger than New York City. Imagine the whole territory that Belgium or Maryland occupies, covered entirely with skyscrapers. NEOM aspires to be the mecca of tourism, technology, biotechnology, and a lot more. And all of this with zero-2 emissions into the atmosphere. An ecological, environmentally friendly, synergistic, and 2.0 city. By the way, it is curious that the country of oil and fossil fuels, they now want to make a city free of CO2 emissions. But that is another story. And you're probably thinking, why? Who would think that building the largest city in the world in the middle of the desert would be a good idea? Well, as strange as it sounds, in principle, it could make economic sense. To prove it, take a look at this map. If you look at it, NEOM is located on the Red Sea coast, which is where 20% of the world's maritime traffic passes through. It could easily be a logistics hub. In addition, it would be the ultimate tax haven. They could even consider creating a zone without taxes of any kind, a special economic zone, independent of the government of Saudi Arabia and managed directly by Mohammed Bin Salman. To all this, we add that the country itself would finance the first wave of construction, we have a good place to invest. And you're probably thinking, and no one lives on that land. Can they really start building there without having to buy the land first? Well, the truth is that it is a practically unpopulated area. The only inhabitants of that region are a nomadic tribe, the Al-Huwaitid. But remember, we are talking about Saudi Arabia, a country where human rights are, at best, optional. For Bin Salman, displacing all these nomads is as simple as saying, get out of here, or I will send in the army. But just how ambitious is this project? Well, at least on paper, the idea for NEOM is to have a Jurassic Park with robotic dinosaurs. But that's not all. They've also said that they are going to have an artificial moon. So yeah, I did say that. So why do they need an artificial moon, you might ask? What return on investment can an artificial moon give you? Well, I honestly don't know, but Bin Salman has said he wants an artificial moon. So he gets an artificial moon. And, well, what about the beaches? Well, you see, the beaches themselves are already beautiful. We all love to see the sea and the waves. But what if we could make the waves shine? Well, NEOM will also have waves that glow in the dark. It may seem incredible to you, but it is in fact possible to make the sea glow in the dark, which is a sentence I honestly never thought I'd say. Apparently, there is a type of unicellular algae that, when it reproduces without control, generates a toxin that glows in the dark. If you search on the internet, you can find incredible images in Taiwan or California, where they have suffered plagues of bioluminescence of this kind. This is a spectacular phenomenon, but at the same time, a real problem. As the name indicates, this toxin that glows in the dark is toxic. That is, it kills all the flora and fauna in the water. And I'm not sure how this fits in with the idea of making a completely green and environmentally friendly city, but who is going to argue with Bin Salman? And you're probably thinking now, well, what about the roads? What are they going to do with the cars to prevent them from polluting the atmosphere? Well, don't worry, Bin Salman has thought of that. Pay attention.
I don't want pavements and roads. In 2030, we will have flying taxis. Quote attributed to Mohammed Bin Salman.
And this is just a taste of everything they want to do for this city. The schools will have teachers who teach through holograms. The streets will be cleaned by robots. And there will even be cameras on every corner monitoring the citizens. To give you an idea, the concept of NEOM is to create a model of what human life in the future will be. And Bin Salman is more than ready to make that model whatever it takes. At the time of making this video, NEOM already had an airport built and running. They have just built a water desalination plant with the capacity to process 50,000 cubic meters of water per day. And despite the austerity brought on by the coronavirus, Saudi Arabia has already signed a lot of contracts with construction companies between March and September of this year. But the big question that you'll all be asking is it really fair to call it a Jurassic Park if the dinosaurs are animatronic? I'm kidding, of course. The question you're wondering is, how much is this monstrosity going to cost? Well, remember I told you to hold onto your chairs? Do that now, because the budget to build NEOM from scratch is $500 billion. $500 billion. That's the equivalent of Belgium's entire GDP. As you can imagine, Bin Salman's idea is not to finance this all from his own pocket. Heavens no. Saudi Arabia takes the first step, but the rest of that money should come from international investors. At the end of the day, who wouldn't want to invest in such a promising project? Well, right now, we are going to look at that.
Killing is bad for business.
As strange as it sounds, when Bin Salman announced the NEOM project in 2017, many people said they would join in. And we're not just talking about any millionaires. Richard Branson said he wanted to invest in NEOM. And Norman Foster, one of the world's most famous architects, also said he wanted to build the city's first skyscrapers. In the end, as crazy as this idea sounds, it is still a very inspiring project, especially if you're a Richard Branson or Norman Foster type. Who wouldn't want to be the first to build a city with artificial cabs, dinosaurs, and, I say again, an artificial moon? So yeah, back in 2017, NEOM seemed like a good idea. But in 2018, something happened that changed the perception of the project forever.
CIA concludes Saudi Crown Prince ordered Jamal Khashoggi's assassination. Washington Post.
At the start of this video, I already told you that Bin Salman had no qualms at all about putting the entire political elite of Saudi Arabia in prison, although that prison was a luxury hotel. What's more, in 2017, Bin Salman kidnapped the Lebanese Prime Minister. We've covered the full story in another VisualPolitik video, in case you're interested, and after all, why wouldn't you be? But this is already on another level. Jamal Khashoggi was a Wall Street Journal journalist who was very critical of Bin Salman. One day, he entered the Saudi embassy in Turkey, and he came out cut up in little pieces in plastic bags. Bin Salman literally ordered him to be killed and quartered. As you can imagine, anyone who may have been interested in doing business with Bin Salman abandoned the idea at that point. It was no longer a question of ethics, but pure survival. Would you really dare to have a business meeting with Bin Salman knowing that you could be killed at any moment? In fact, Bin Salman himself seems to have understood that this event doomed his project. This is what he said in 2018.
No one will invest in the NEOM project for years. Mohammed Bin Salman.
And I imagined him saying that, crying while washing the blood off of his hands. And now I ask you, what would you do if all your potential investors turned their backs on you because they were afraid you were going to kill them? Maybe a good idea would be, I don't know, to stop killing all the people around you? But instead, Bin Salman's decided to call Khashoggi's relatives to have an official photo taken with them. He then forbade Khashoggi's son to leave Saudi Arabia. And Bin Salman's personal killers, the so-called Tiger Squad, continue to threaten all Saudi activists living abroad. Meanwhile, in order to clean up his image, Bin Salman has dedicated himself to organising sporting events in NEOM. As the city is not yet built and does not have any stadiums, instead of big soccer competitions, they have organised extreme sports events. Wakeboarding, paragliding, wingsuit flying. And not only that, remember that NEOM is the city of the future. And what is the sport of the future? Exactly, killing activists. No, I'm kidding, it's this.
NEOM signs MOU to become global e-gaming hub, Arabian business.
As you may have heard, in 2019, Bin Salman signed a contract to sponsor World Cup events of esports such as Dota 2 and League of Legends. And that does sort of fit with gamers like myself's image of the world. I mean, yes, he might be quashing political dissidents and murdering people, but at least he's not charging for microtransactions. However, this ingenious plan has not turned out as he thought. Do you remember that tribe that lives, or rather used to live, on the land where the city of NEOM will be? That's the Al Huwaitat tribe. And many members of this tribe do not want to leave the land they have lived on for centuries for the construction of the project. In other countries, when these things happen, there are lawsuits and governments compensate the owners with large sums of money. This is something called private property. However, private property in Saudi Arabia is like human rights, in that it is very much an optional extra.
Saudi forces kill man who refused to give up property. Abdul Rahim Al-Hwati was allegedly shot dead after he refused to give up his property for a Red Sea mega project. Al Jazeera.
Meanwhile, many activists from this tribe living in other parts of the world say that they are receiving death threats of all kinds. The Tiger Squad sends them messages like, "Don't think that because you live in London, you are safe." And this explains why these esports have also abandoned Bin Salman. Even gaming companies can only take so much. In this case, it was the LEC workers themselves, that is, the European League of Legends tournament, who went on strike to force Riot Games to cancel all contracts with Saudi Arabia. And, of course, Riot Games listened to them. So see? Gamers, rise up.
Up until this point, there were some problematic sponsors, Shell and KitKat, for example, but this was a different level. This is a project to build a megacity directly overseen by a despotic leader of a country that murders journalists. I think that was the breaking point for a lot of people. Devin Pyrotechnics Young, League of Legends esport commentator, Washington Post.
By now, the message from the whole world to Bin Salman is pretty clear. Stop killing people. It may seem like stating the obvious. You may even think that it is so obvious that it is some sort of black comedy. But the truth is that for Bin Salman, this is apparently far from obvious. In this situation, where the whole world is turning its back on him, Bin Salman is not thinking of stopping killing people. Far from it. At the time of making this video, at least, there was no announcement that Saudi Arabia is going to cancel that Tiger Squad, or that they are considering ending the killing. The opposite, in fact, is true. After these murders and all these cancelled contracts, Bin Salman is trying a different strategy, hiring communications agencies. In June 2020, Saudi Arabia announced contracts worth $3 million with two international PR agencies, Burson Cohn and Wolf, and Runder Finn. Frankly, no matter how many communications campaigns you do, I doubt very much that murders can be whitewashed. But apart from human rights violations, Saudi Arabia is still stuck with the same economic problem. Think about it for a moment. Bin Salman is on the ropes. On the one hand, he needs to get this project off the ground no matter what. His whole public image is linked to NEOM's success. All Saudi Arabia's diversification plans are linked to NEOM's success, as are all of the mega projects. And without the support of foreign investors, it is difficult to think that he can carry them out. And the financial tricks he has been using so far are not exactly helping him in this case. For example, floating Aramco on the stock market gave him $26.6 billion. But that money, that came almost entirely from Saudi citizens themselves, who bought shares after virtually being forced to by the government. The objective of that operation was to get money from outside the country, and in that sense, Aramco's IPO was an absolute failure. Now, it doesn't need 26 billion, but 500 billion. So, the burning questions are, will we really get to see a Jurassic Park in Saudi Arabia? And I'd argue, no, because they're animatronic dinosaurs, not real dinosaurs. Watch the movie, it's pretty clear. Do you really think this mega project, this NEOM megacity, is a good investment? Or will it be the ultimate ruin of Saudi Arabia? And what would you do, most importantly, if you got your own artificial moon? Leave your answers in the comments. As always, we really hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit like if you did, and don't forget to subscribe for brand new videos. Also, don't forget to check out our friends at the Reconsider Media podcast. They provided the vocals in this episode that were not my dulcet tones. Also, this channel is possible because of Patreon and our patrons on that platform. Please consider joining them and supporting our mission of providing independent political coverage. And, as always, see you next time.
If you want to learn more about politics and world affairs and hear some more of my lovely voice, come check out the Reconsider podcast, where we don't do the thinking for you. Find Reconsider at www.reconsidermedia.com or on Apple or Google Play or your favorite podcatcher.